So capital appreciation in Dubai is an interesting one. The Dubai market has seen a few really interesting cycles, both booms and busts, if you like, over its fairly brief 20-year history of freehold real estate. So the market boomed from 2007, 2008, and then global financial crisis in September 2008 saw property prices come off very, very significantly. And we've never actually reached the peak, should we say, from 2008. In 2014, which was the previous peak, prices were getting close to that. Sort of the next 5 years had a period of fairly negative sentiment, and certainly lots of properties coming to the market. The population maybe wasn't quite keeping up with that supply of property coming to the market. And we saw prices soften off a lot all the way through to 2020 when we hit COVID, and then we had a new period of excitement to worry about. Post-COVID, Dubai's government have obviously put in some amazing initiatives around visas, around population growth, about the starting of new businesses, which have seen the population boom and hence the Dubai real estate market boom. And subsequently, in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we've seen the prices get back to almost 2014 levels. So they're still below the rates they were, we mentioned, in 2008. And arguably, for some people, they would say, well, so in 10 years, the market hasn't increased. You could look at that in a positive or a negative way. But the fact is that Dubai, if you look at it, that it's indexed against currency, then that's actually still a long, long way off. So that's without factoring in inflation for the last 10 years. The prices are literally at the same level. So I think if you factor that in, it indicates a huge amount of potential growth for Dubai. And when you start looking at population targets and the 2020 vision that we've spoken about and many times before, it gives a real positivity and a big buzz about the place that there's a huge potential upside. So for investors for capital growth, I think the opportunity is huge. I think it does depend a lot whether you buy into the fact that Dubai is on its way to 6 million people by 2040 or potentially a bit earlier. And if you do, then I think it's quite an exciting period for the next 10 years. Rental yields can vary quite a lot depending on areas. So areas like downtown, for example, where you've got higher property values, tend to be sort of 4.5% to 5%. And then at the upper end of things, and some of the cheaper properties that we manage, we could even be getting as high as 10% rental income. So there is a big range. However, the rental returns in Dubai are very, very strong. The lack of tax is obviously very enticing. When you compare to any major city around the world, I think the returns here look very, very attractive. For short-term rentals, we've got house and house holidays that are able to generate as much as 20 to 25% more than the equivalent long-term rental. And that's after paying all the costs, all the management fees, and obviously all the utility bills and that kind of thing. So that's something that we can certainly explore. We can do a projection for someone for a specific property, and arrange furniture and all the bits to really take the hassle out of it. And someone can have it fully managed and just see the money turning up in their account every month. Some of the benefits for me for short term, obviously if you can make a slightly higher return, then that's amazing. One huge benefit is that the tenant hasn't got an ejari. So an ejari literally means rental contract in Arabic. And what that does is it really protects the tenant that once they've got an ejari for 12 months, they have the right to renew for another 12 months. But for short term, there's no such thing in place. We're registered with Dubai Tourism, so tourism, like tax per night, for example, has to be paid. But it does give the landlord the power back, and in terms of that tenant only has the right to that property for the prepaid period. So for example, even if they rented it for 3 months in advance, they would only have the right to that 3 months. And at the end of that, if the market's gone up, then obviously the landlord's entitled, or we're entitled on their behalf, I should say, as House and House Holidays, to ask more for that next month. I mean, I guess for the long term, for the people who are paying a mortgage on the property, then you know exactly how much you're getting. So typically there's the 12-month contract, as I said, the ejari that's registered, and you would get a series of checks. So occasionally you get the full year up front, or more typically these days you get, say, 3 or 4 checks throughout the year, but it's very consistent, you know what you're getting. So that's definitely that security factor. For someone who's, feeling the pinch a bit and feeling like their mortgage payments are quite close to the rental amount, then that would maybe provide them with a bit of security. It would be a good reason to look at doing long-term rentals. To make a quick return, it can be done. I think, we get calls from people who say, I really want to just buy something and sell it next week. I think that's probably a bit optimistic. I think there are opportunities in the market that you could buy and sell within, say, 12 months. There aren't a lot of opportunities, but there are some. So we have to try and, pinpoint those for those kind of investors that want to be able to buy and sell something just purely to make capital growth. There are a few off-plan opportunities at the moment that we see that you can put fairly small down payments down and potentially make a very big return. Of course, with anything, there's a certain risk attached, but I do think there's this huge upside for a few of the right projects. I think Dubai often gets a bad name by people who are mis-selling something and really, promising an investor, typically maybe in a shopping mall, or saying, oh, this is, going to double in price. So I do think that people need to be careful, and they need to try and really do their research, do their homework to make sure that what they are getting into is in fact what they think it is.